Let's talk about forbidden fruits. Every so often, a film gets released that ticks all of the ModernGurlz boxes, and recently, that seemed to be Forbidden Fruits. On paper, the premise is pretty irresistible. A group of stylish witches wreaking havoc in a shopping mall, like Mean Girls meets The Craft. But as much as I wanted to love it, it just left me wanting more. More drama, more humor, more everything. Today we're talking about what Forbidden Fruits got right, what it got wrong, and what I personally would have done differently. Obviously, there will be spoilers, you've been warned. Let's get into it. The film introduces us to a trio of saleswomen, Apple, Fig, and Cherry, who work at the Free Eden clothing store at their local mall in Texas. One day on their lunch break, they meet Pumpkin, who is a pretzel pusher at Sister Salt's, an Auntie Anne's parody. Although they're anti-food court workers, Pumpkin captures the attention of the group's leader, Apple, and she's invited to interview for a position at Free Eden. The experience is unnerving to say the least, with the trio revealing themselves to be a coven of witches seeking paradise. They induct Pumpkin into the group with a series of chants and a beverage made of various bodily fluids, and they tell her to confess her sins in one of the changing rooms to the spirit of Marilyn Monroe. They proceed to lock her in the store overnight, a sort of hazing ritual, and the following day, Pumpkin reemerges as a more stylish and confident version of herself. Apple shows Pumpkin around the mall, giving her a charm bracelet that matches the rest of the Free Eden girls. Pumpkin returns the favor by gifting her a doll, which unbeknownst to the rest of the girls, has a camera inside of it. Although Cherry is initially resistant to her presence, thinking that Pumpkin is replacing her, she's slowly accepted into the group and learns their secrets. Apple lives in her car, and rumors are that she poisoned and killed her father. Both Cherry and Fig are breaking the coven's no boys rule, with Cherry having flings with random male employees at the mall, while Fig is in love with a guy named Norman. Pumpkin also discovers that there was previously a fourth member of the coven, Pickle, but Apple convinced the girls to put a hex on her after she started dating someone, landing the boy in the hospital and making Pickle go insane. History repeats itself when Apple makes the group perform another hex to find the traitor in their midst, and shortly after, Pickle, who has been loitering around the mall, dies. They all become increasingly paranoid, and during an emergency meeting, all of this tension comes to a head. Pumpkin accuses Apple of poisoning her, Fig quits the coven to be with Norman, revealing that her real name is Emily, while Cherry finally acknowledges that Apple isn't a true friend. Norman arrives in the midst of all this hubbub, and in a panic, Cherry accidentally stabs him with a knife, freaking out all of the girls. They receive a tornado warning and the mall is locked down with the girls inside. Apple and Cherry argue, leading to Cherry becoming trapped in the mall's escalator. Fig and Pumpkin try to help her, but they don't make it in time, and Cherry is killed. Fig tries to escape, but before she can get anywhere, a skylight shatters and cuts her in half. This leaves only Pumpkin and Apple, who have a heart-to-heart while cleaning up in the mall fountain. Pumpkin reveals that she's actually Apple's half-sister, and only joined Free Eden to get revenge for the death of their father. The two have a showdown, with Apple eventually getting the upper hand, and she strangles Pumpkin to death. Apple goes on the run, winding up at a different mall, where she meets a group of girls who offer her a job at their Free Eden location. Now let me start off by talking about what I did like about the movie. One of the biggest highlights were the outfits, with costume designer Sarah Millman leaning into the sort of 2020s era microtrends that actual retail workers would absolutely wear. Like there's an entire subgenre of TikTok video, which is just what I wore to my mall job, and some of the outfits look almost identical to the stuff in Forbidden Fruits. My only teeny tiny note is that I wish that each of the girls' aesthetics were more clearly defined and consistent. Apple's looks are probably the most thought out, looking very sexy witch meets cult leader. But I felt that Fig's looks, which were sorta sporty, punky goth, had a lot of overlap with Apple's, even though they weren't at all similar personality-wise. Considering she's supposed to be a bit of a nerd, I think some kind of geeky, preppy look could have been interesting for her, especially since it's pretty uncommon to see Black characters with that sort of style. As for Cherry, her look is sexy with a bit of ditzy, but the references are kinda all over the place, sometimes going hippie, other times country, and other times glam. Pumpkin's style has even less rhyme or reason to it, which is a huge missed opportunity. Since she's an outsider infiltrating the group, dressing her distinctly different from the other girls would have quietly communicated that she doesn't really belong. But regardless, all of the actresses look fantastic, to the point that I didn't even mind the ridiculous wigs they put Lili Reinhart and Victoria Pedretti in. I really appreciated how female-centric the entire production was. It's written by women, directed by a woman, and the main cast is all women. Something that is definitely reflected in the story itself, which has girl power themes, but in a self-aware way that isn't afraid to poke fun at the flaws in the modern feminist movement, namely through Apple's character, who weaponizes women support women rhetoric to her advantage, using it to control the rest of the girls and make them feel guilty about perfectly normal things, like being in love. There are actually a lot of really funny one-off jokes sprinkled throughout the movie, like Pumpkin walking in on Cherry while she's having sex, but Cherry not recognizing her because she has on her sister's salt hat. The girls chant goat's milk, thigh gaps, rose petals, bone cast, truffle oil, bitch slap, blood clots, juice press is also the perfect blend of Halloween and Whole Foods, being just ridiculous enough that you can tell it's a joke, but sincere enough that it could still believably be a hex. I also just loved Apple saying, "Oh my god, do you hate women?" Because that's definitely what feminism should be. Now here's where things get complicated. The tone of the film is all over the place. It starts off as a run-of-the-mill click movie, then somewhere around the middle it pivots into a goofy whodunit, then by the third act it turns into Final Destination. Now I wouldn't have minded that if the transition was organic, but these shifts feel less like deliberate creative choices and more like the script went through several different rewrites without a final passover. And as a result, every 40 minutes it feels like you're watching a different movie. The film is clearly trying to occupy the same space as Bodies, 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 Bottoms, and Do Revenge. But those movies work because they commit completely to the bit, and Forbidden Fruits is far less successful in its campy attempt, in large part because of how inconsistent the delivery is. I personally thought that Lili Reinhart and Victoria Pedretti were the only members of the cast who could consistently pull off the material, which I would credit to their past work. Reinhart's years on Riverdale prepared her for the most ridiculous of storylines, and she's able to play melodrama with total sincerity, as evidenced in Forbidden Fruits, where she genuinely makes selling a sequin miniskirt feel like the end of the world. Pedretti, on the other hand, was on You, another show that toes the line between comedy and thriller. And if you watch The Haunting of Hill House, then you know that in general, she's just a very strong actor. Her innate ability is actually why I think Cherry winds up feeling the most developed of all the characters, with Pedretti adding a heartbreaking sadness to the character's bubbly persona that helps you understand that she's just a broken person looking for some sort of community. Now, I'm not saying that Lola Tung and Alexandra Shipp were noticeably bad, I just felt that they weren't able to get as many laughs out of me, whether because of timing or delivery. The script also has a habit of introducing plot lines and then just abandoning them, which leaves the whole movie feeling pretty low stakes. The Apple is a lesbian reveal is a good example. It comes out of nowhere, and the film doesn't really do anything with it. The character has a hatred of men, but that's become such a universal trait in modern feminist media nowadays that it isn't a great indicator of sexuality. And while she is close to Cherry, her treatment of her isn't controlling like a jealous lover. It's just cruel, and I just don't believe that someone would treat the person they're attracted to like that, even if they were a psycho. Then there's the big third act reveal that Apple and Pumpkin are half-sisters, which doesn't have any weight to it. Partly because Pumpkin's scheming is so heavy-handed that it barely qualifies as a twist, but also because nothing in their dynamic feels remotely sisterly. And after the reveal, neither character actually changes. Their perception of their father stays exactly the same. So you're just sitting there wondering why it matters at all. Honestly, I think the movie would have been more interesting if Pumpkin was the sibling of Pickles instead, giving her a reason to initially want revenge on all of the girls before her feelings start to shift. It would have made Pickle more central to the actual plot, and it would have given Pumpkin a reason to romantically pursue Apple, which would have made their final showdown a jilted lover situation instead of the weird pseudo-sibling thing that we got. And don't even get me started on Sharon, who is such a nothing character. I wish they hadn't bothered with her at all. Don't get me wrong, I loved seeing Gabrielle Union. It really solidified the chick flick vibes, but if you cut out any mention of her, it would have absolutely no impact on the story, which is actually why I didn't even bother mentioning her in my summary. Bet you didn't notice. Speaking of having no impact on the story, I'm not sure why Victoria Pedretti was so hypersexualized in this movie. Now, obviously, I understand that Cherry is dealing with her personal trauma through her promiscuity, which is a perfectly fine character motivation. But I'm not sure that that meant that the actress had to be the only person getting nude over and over and over again. All of the shots of her ass and tits were just jarringly gratuitous, especially when none of the other characters were framed like that in the slightest. You can just tell that this was Meredith Alloway's first film, and I don't mean that as an insult. Making a movie is hard, but her limitations as a writer and director definitely show in the final product. Like, we couldn't get one shot outside of the mall, just one, or at the very least, could we have some half-decent lighting and less excessive ADR? But here's the thing. I can actually see a version of Forbidden Fruits that works really well. Not as a movie, but as a series. Something in the vein of Girl from Nowhere, where Apple is essentially drifting from mall to mall, leaving a trail of chaos behind her. That format would let the drama build naturally, give the characters room to actually develop, and lean into the anthology structure the movie is hinting at with the final scene. Do I think that Forbidden Fruits is going to sit alongside Heather's, Jawbreaker, or Jennifer's Body in the Hall of Fame of female-led dark comedies? Probably not, but I do genuinely appreciate that it's trying to do something different, even while being chock full of references. There is an audience for this movie. Like, it would be perfect for a spooky season slumber party with a group of girlfriends. Something to laugh and cringe and shriek at. What did you think of Forbidden Fruits? I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!